15 seconds to play. Trey comes to the front court, tied at 103. Gives off to Hayward at the top. Gordon gets a pick from Favors. Rolls to the right. Attacks the basket. Off the glass. No, Favors jams it with 2.1 seconds left. A Favors follow puts the Jazz up by 2. 105-103.
A win against the Lakers in December is our random highlight of the day today. Hope you're well. I can move. I'm alive. I've survived Jazz training camp. All right. I can move a little. Welcome to Tip Off. Pow. It's September 25th. It's a Thursday. We're inching ever so closer to NBA season. How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. Thanks so much for taking the time to tune in whenever and wherever you might be tuning into this thing. Before we get going, we got a big show today. I was perfectly organized, had everything lined up today, and then my computer wouldn't load up the Hangout, so we're going to be a little bit of one of those days where I'm loading stuff up to get you stuff, but I've got a pretty good show. We'll talk about the media training camp day that I went through yesterday. Quinn really revealed a huge amount to us that I can share with you on things. We'll talk a really interesting graph that was done out there about the best players and offensive and defensive impact and things over about the last 14 years of the NBA. I'll show you that. We'll dig deep into the Eric Bledsoe situation. I think Phoenix is in a lot of trouble, and we'll touch on some other things. Plus, your questions, if you want to throw them up there, the question and answer feature, I believe, is up and open. All right, before we start going into the NBA and get our stuff, I've got to just get one thing off my chest or across. To all the Dodger fans out there, congratulations on winning your division. You suck. I hate you and suck on our 2 world championships recently. Okay. I still feel better. I really don't, actually. I actually was over in the Fort Union area yesterday, and some guy walks in with his Dodger shirt on, all ready for his clinch. And I was like, you look like such a nice person. Like, what's wrong with you? It was pretty funny. My wife, who grew up a Dodger fan, is enjoying this. And so, see, this is where I'm different. I think that's what sports is about. I think sports is all about the fact that this guy walks in with his wife, perfectly nice couple. He wearing his Dodger shirt. I look at him, I'm like, but you look like such a nice person. And you go back and forth a little bit. Like, I then walked over to them and asked them, like, hey, by the way, and actually, I don't know this. I haven't checked it. I'm openly admit I played college baseball, but my level of following baseball at this point is that I get an update every notification on my phone every day of what the Giants are doing, and then I read the game story on MLB.com, and then that's how I'm a fan now. Okay, like I'm not even sure I can name 15 players. I watched a little bit of Clayton Kershaw last night until it just became unpleasant. I watched the 14-inning game the other day because Vin was calling it. That's the extent where I am. So it's not like I'm some diehard anymore. But anyway, I think that's where sports is. That's where even on like the whole Max Hall thing, which obviously is a very serious issue, but the rivalries are not a serious issue. At least they shouldn't be. So you should be able to always be poking fun and having a nice time, with that. Like I don't know. Like I'm just different. I think a Ute fan should be putting something on his Cougar fans desk. Maybe right now, that's something that Max stole that says, hey, by the way, I found this at the local store. I thought you might like it and love Max Hall, and put it on your desk. I think that's funny. It doesn't mean you have a disrespect to Max Hall that he's going through a serious issue. He's clearly got some addiction issue, right? Whatever, like it might be, because there's nothing to me that's serious inside his rivalries. Like I didn't really mean that every Dodger fan go suck. Well, I did actually, because they're Dodger fans. So right? I mean, I just said goodbye to a dog named Berkeley. I'm the biggest Stanford fan ever on the planet. I don't know. Anyway, quick reminder: I need you guys' help. You're awesome. I love you. Interaction line. 801-200-3738. I'm 7. We're playing a basketball game like a week from next Tuesday. So we won't do a full out broadcast at that point, but anyway, the interaction line this year is 801-200-3738. If you have a question for a Jazz player, which I could do on Media Day on Monday. If you have a question for Ron Boone, And if you have someone you want to nominate for Jazz Fan of the Game, I'll be mentioning that probably every day. 801-237-38. All right, let's dig into this. Yesterday was really cool. The Jazz, and thank you to the Jazz and the PR, Derek and Jonathan and Caroline. Everybody worked so hard. The coaching staff, unbelievable for them to give that much time during this. They opened it up for an afternoon of media training camp, and we arrived, and we had these little chairs, and here was I had my locker. We had chairs, so here was my little locker thing that said Lock 9. That was my baseball number. I wasn't trying to be Larry. And we had our little jerseys, and we got a little cool bag tag that had it like the players do. It was really cool, and got all dressed, went out there, and Quin opened it up unbelievably to me and just walked us through the entire offensive philosophy of the Utah Jazz, which was really cool. And I've been fortunate enough that I've been at every single one of these open gyms, and I've seen what they're doing, and I got it. I understand what our offense is, but it's not really something that I have felt totally comfortable sharing with you because I'm seeing it in that setting. So now I feel a little bit better. He told every single media member. So he opened up talking about that they want to play with a pass, play with pace, and play with purpose. And play with the pass is basic. Play with pace is getting it up early, and he's got some areas they really want to attack. And play with purpose is really, to him, spacing. That everybody's got to have a reason why they are where they are on the floor. So one of the early things is, hey, we want to bring the ball up the floor, up the wings. And I think I've shared that with you a lot. And his big thing, and you're going to hear me talk about this in the play-by-play. I'm going to integrate this. It's a little deep, but attack at the 45. And is going to be a phrase I've decided that it's so integral to what Quin is doing with this team that I'm going to use it in the play-by-play. And what it is in the old days with the Utah Jazz, I almost feel like I should go do that drawing on my face thing. Let me see if I can do this, actually, for those of you that are on the video. So and this is so funny because I ended up drawing on my face, and last time I did this, it did not turn out well. So for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you'll actually get this. In the old days, we used to bring, Stockton would bring the ball up right here, sometimes in the middle of the floor, and Karl Malone would swing through into this. For those of you who not have the video, Stockton would bring it up the right wing. This is going to be our example. And Malone would run from the left side into the right block, and they'd run what's called power, and they'd put it into that area, into the right block to build the offense. Well, this is not going to be the way we do it anymore. Now, the exact opposite really almost is taking place. And what the concept is here that he shared with us, and again, I will keep this on the video and try to make it somewhat understandable. So the ball is still going to come up the side. He wants it coming up, and for this case, we're going to have it up the side. The first big is going to run to the opposite block. The first big from the opposite block, leaving an open post on the ball side. And then the second big actually trails outside the three-point line. And your two wings are going to space, one likely in the near corner and one likely in the far corner, if they can get there in time. And now the ball comes up, and whether it's Alec Burks, whether it's Trey Burke, whether it's Dante Exum, Gordon Hayward, or Rodney Hood, now the ball comes up, and the first action is to break the paint on a 45, on attack from the 45 toward the basket. If that's available and can be done, that's the number one desired outcome, is that you break the paint. Now, if you can break the paint and the defender flips, you get a quick corner three. Your other big is right here. Or as this outside wing drops down, he can throw it out to that left corner for an early three attack there. If that becomes unavailable, then what he talked about was, as I erase that line, he talks about is you have the big the first action that you could possibly have on part 2 of this offense, which is really just a flow, is that now the point guard gets a drag screen from the trailing big, in this most likely Cantor, and you start the offense coming in to some level off an early drag screen. If that's not available as part of this, again, all of this flow, is the next thing that happens can be any, and the whole key to this whole thing is that you're getting into it early and often, is some horns action, basically. He calls it a little bit differently than horns. They call it something a little different than horns, but you would end up bringing through some various ways. You could send a stagger pick that brings the ball back up here. You can do a lot of different things, but let's say basically that the point guard brings the ball back up to the center. Now, one big comes to one elbow, another big comes to the other elbow. So now you have guys in each corner, the ball at the elbow, bigs at the elbow, and the ball up top. Enter into either elbow, and this is some of the neatest stuff that Quin has implemented into the offense, and I hope you're still following this on the audio version. So to back up, let me see if I can back up. The first thing that's happening is the first big is running opposite side of the ball to the rim, or to the side, allowing an open post on the front side, on the ball side, and the open post allows for what Quin is calling an attack from the 45, which is the 45-degree angle into the basket from the point, from whoever's the ball handler. If that's not available, you'll see a lot of early drag screen pick and roll. Let's say none of those things develop, but if done correctly, we're still very early in the shot clock. Now what Quin is likely going to want to have happen is the ball comes up to the top, whether it's from the point guard or from somebody else. Each guy gets to a corner. The wings are all at the corners, and the bigs are on the elbows. And this is some of the neatest stuff that we saw it in Summer League, and then Quin walked us through it yesterday. And yes, by the way, I do think this was really cool that we were walking through this, if you can't tell. And the basic concept here now is the point guard hits the elbow. And so for this example, let's say that he goes and hits the right elbow and puts the ball at the right elbow. The point guard now runs off of the elbow that he gave the ball to, either gets a handoff and curls straight to the rim, or more than likely goes and sets a pick for the guy down in the corner. If they overplay it, it's a backdoor cut, and they actually ran us through. We actually ran through this whole sequence right here. We actually did a drill where we threw the ball to the elbow, cut off the guy, went and set a pick for our now if they're overplaying it, it's a backdoor cut from the big passing. If they don't overcut, then he comes off the pick, comes around for a DHO, dribble handoff, or just a simple handoff because he's not dribbling, and is open at the mid-range trying to create something. Probably in all likelihood, the other big drops. The big who just set the pick pops up, and suddenly you've got your spacing again, guys in the corners, one big high, one big low, the ball's in the middle, and you can figure out how you play from there on the flow. This corner split action, I guess, is what I'm talking about, is really, to me, a very interesting aspect of this offense. With the ball in the high post, it means that Ennis and Derek and Rudy are going to have to pass and have to be able to find people. So Marcus Sol does this very, very well. And there's some interesting things you can do on this, frankly, where if you empty out that corner and you run the pick off and you get caught and you don't get caught, there's some really beautiful stuff Memphis runs off of this side of things. So this gets to be very, very interesting offense, and it was really cool for Quin to share this with us and all of that. By the way, I would like you to be giving a bunch of thumbs up to all that craziness on the bottom of your screen right now. You know, if you're watching this on YouTube and you've got the new applause meter, I need you to give a bunch of thumbs up to that craziness I just tried to show you out there. So that was the coolest part about it, was kind of walking through this and all the different actions and the corner game and how he really was very open with us about what the offense was, what the concepts. And so just so you, I don't know if you really care. So we went through the offense. He showed it to us. Then we all stretched out. Then we ran through 4 different stations. We had shooting games. I think I made one. Then I was on Tony Jones's team. He was very upset we were losing. I'm like, dude, other teams have Thurl Bailey, Ron Boone, and Britton Johnson. We're not beating them. He's like, I can't believe we're losing. And Big Tim from 1320 was like, never mind. He was all fired up. So, and he's a gunner. Holy smokes. Pass is not, and he is not playing with the pass. So they ran us through that, and then we went to different stations. One of the stations was our stations were kind of working on these different little sets, and they have this whole play that's called a gaggle that they're running where they run a double pick and it creates some things, and they ran us off the side of this. There's so many millions of variations and all the things that are taking place here. I just gave you some basics to it. But it was a really cool experience. Then we scrimmaged. PK had the shot of the day. I'm sorry, Jody. PK had the shot of the day, running hook from the right baseline over Ben Anderson of K-Fan for a buzzer-beating 3, and as only PK can, he turned, raised his arms, high-fived all the people in the crowd, and then left. Just went out the door. Left. Hit that shot and went home because PK is awesome. Jody hit a nice long jumper on the right side and then did one of the most bizarre, exciting dances of all time, which is floating around the internet. Carter Williams, I think is his name, did a really cool video at DeseretNews.com that's worth seeing. So it was neat. Hands can really rebound. He's really big. Wow. Really, really big. I went inside and started bouncing around with the big guys for one play and decided I wanted my ski season. So I backed out of that. It was really cool. I don't usually do this, but if anybody has a question right now and wants to put it in the chat room, from what I just did, is there anything in that has it would be weird if I go back and answer a question. Is there anything, chat room, anybody want to drop a question? And there's 20, or I'll check the Google if there's the hangout room, the regular room. Is there anything in there that you guys that I just brought up that needs a question or someone hasn't? Because I think that will make more sense if I do it right now. Does not seem to be the case. Does not seem to be the case. Clint wants a coffee salute. I don't know what that means, but today is a Dharma espresso from Temple in Sacramento. It's very, very good, very fresh espresso today, if that's what you're wondering. All right, so let's go to the next thing. And as I said, I had everything really well prepared today, and then a few things kind of blew up in the sense that I had these things really well prepared, and then I needed to reset the computer. So this is a really cool graph. That was built that takes the 14 years worth of plus minus data and turns it into a graph, and I want to share it with you. A lot of video today. I apologize for those of you that are on the audio, but hopefully I'm making it hopefully this is going to be, it's just so much. Yeah, this looks like you can see it pretty well. I'll make it a little bigger and see if it helps you at all. So what this is a look at the plus minus. It's really cool work. It's got 4 squares. It's a basic graph, basic graph, and the 4 squares, and the upper half is your offense per 100 possessions that your team's better when you're on the floor. So the best offensive players are all on the top line. Above the defense is the left to right axis. So anybody on the right side of center is helping themselves defensively. So it's interesting. Jason Collins is in here as one of the best defensive players. Ben Wallace, Andrew Bogut having his big impact. They're both negative on their team offensively, so they're below the half line. So if you look at these squares, the bottom right square is, and this is over the last 14 years. Jeremiah Singelman put this together. It's really cool. And his website, by the way, is plus-the-nba.appspot.com. Really neat stuff. So, and this is actually, you can actually, what's so incredible about it is I can actually start changing some aspects of the graph. Like if I want only people that have played over 70,000 possessions, I can change it, which I'm about to do. And it becomes, so these are the best, these are the best of the best. So let's look at it this way. It's kind of an easier one to look at. The best defensive player over the last 14 years impacting the game is Ben Wallace. Surprisingly, Nene, who I love, is there as well. Tyson Chandler, Jermaine O'Neal, Bruce Bowen, Marcus Camby. Not really big surprises. We've kind of known that. That's what we've been told. Actually, the best overall defensive player is Kevin Garnett and Tim Duncan. And those other guys were great offensive players that had negative impact defensively. The best offensive players in the game are LeBron, Steve Nash, Chris Paul, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, Tracy McGrady, Manu, Dirk, Ray Allen. Darren's pretty high on this list. But then you kind of put it on the graph. And these guys, you actually notice the graph is no longer square because of the fact that these are all players who've played 70,000 or more possessions in the 14 years, which is a buttload. And if you look, the worst offensive players, pretty funny, Samuel Dallenberg, Bruce Bowen, Juwan Howard. Interesting, people didn't probably think of Juwan Howard that way. Antoine Walker. Some interesting names in here. So who, then you go into the square. Garnett's the number one impactful player overall with Duncan, LeBron, the best players, the best. I mean, this kind of says a plus minus pretty good. Karolinko is right in here. Jason Kidd. Pretty fascinating stat. If I back it up a little bit, so now we get back to, 20,000 possessions, eliminate some players in it. You still see the same thing. I cannot, if you're wondering, I cannot go suddenly just take, this is over 14 years. I can't take the most recent. But you see Tony Allen now shows up as one of the better defensive players. Nene still stays in here. Yao Ming. Interesting sometimes to go look at who the worst are, right? So the worst offensive players, Hakeem Warwick, J.J. Hickson, Ron Mercer, Eddie Curry, Brian Skinner, Jacques Vaughn, Jeff Green, Aaron Williams, Michael Olowokandi, but he was a good defensive player. Some of the worst defensive players, Hakeem Warwick's just terrible. He's actually just comes out as the worst player in the league. Earl Boykins, Ricky Davis, Troy Murphy, Willie Green. Not huge surprises. And then there's all sorts of other dots in here. I just thought this was really cool. We're seeing, but what you see is Kevin Garnett over the last 14 years has had the number one defensive impact. Tim Duncan, number two. LeBron, the number one offense. Kobe, Nash. James Harden pops in here now as a positive impact. Ray Allen, Dwayne Wade, along with, I think that was McGrady last time, and I don't know who it is now because the second square is not. Baron Davis, surprisingly good. Paul Pierce. Josh Howard, surprisingly good on this. Amir Johnson, one of my all-time favorite players, suddenly is in the midst of all the best players in the league. Love Amir Johnson. So very interesting piece, I thought, Dunn wanted to share with you. Hope that made some sense to all of you. Next one I wanted to talk about was Eric Bledsoe and what Phoenix has done. Phoenix gave Bledsoe a 5-year, $70 million deal yesterday. Well, let's try to figure out a few things. The first reaction I have contractually is if you're going to give him the max, why are you dragging him through the mud to do it? So the only explanation of that is that the market's changed, and they just felt if he got to restricted open free agency next year after his season last year, 18 points. I hate these stats. 18 points, 5 and 5. I hate listening to people talk about those kind of numbers that are, I'm not giving a field goal percentage. I promise you that. I listened to a whole podcast yesterday where they kept referencing field goal percentage. I was like, okay, this is just irrelevant. He's a special guy. He came out, Bledsoe came, but so here's what happened. I think that they suddenly realized they blinked that if he goes to the open market with a new TV contract and everything else going on, that there's absolutely no way that he wouldn't max out. And so they decided to give him the max now. It's very strange to me. I don't really get it. Honestly, my take on this one is Phoenix ownership Robert Sarver has always been known as being very hands-on, very meddling in the middle of things, very heavy-handed. This feels as though they had a plan and somebody from the outside came in and changed the plan. That's what it feels like to me. I have no proof of that, but I could be that's my gut on this one. Let's take a second and discuss Bledsoe. So real plus minus, which I really like, ESPN put out, he's the 7th best point guard in the NBA. And one of the reasons I really like it is because this is a defensive stud. This is a guy who changes games defensively. I had this is an area where I had just a ton of stuff pulled up for you to look at, and I had to, I kind of lost it. But when you look at Bledsoe, they are offensively, they're actually much better when he's off the floor. He is, just probably to some extent, because how good a Dragic is and everybody else, and maybe some who he played with and some things of that sort. But defensively, he's a real game changer. He's one of the few defensive game changers in the league. Now, does he stay that way after now that he's got the money? Does he suddenly think that he's somebody else in that regard? That's going to be a huge issue, but you can't bank on it. When Bledsoe was off the floor defensively, Phoenix allowed 105.7 points per possession. When he's on the floor, it's 100.5. There are not many guys in the NBA that are 5.2 points plus minus difference. That's why he comes out as the 7th best. Now, offensively, when he's off the floor, they're 108. When he's on the floor, they're 105. Dragic is better. Dragic has a 10-point difference between on the floor and off the floor offense, and the defenses are the exact same. Dragic's really fabulous. And I don't know what they're going to do. Dragic's 28 years old. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Are they just deciding that they don't want to? Did they just decide that they don't want to pay Dragic at 29, 30, 31, and 32 years old? That's a possibility. Dragic, they may be turning the page on Dragic. Phoenix won 48 games last year, and I just don't see it again this year. One of the things, if you lose Dragic, let's take a second and anytime we evaluate a player, I like to go to my rating system. For those who do not know and are new to this, it's the Locke offensive rating system. I will show it to you here. Give you a little bit of knowledge of it. Let's see if this is too big. That's good. So this is last year's. I don't have any filters on this. So the best player in the league was Kevin Durant. Second best, LeBron. Brandon Wright comes out as kind of my outlier, but he shoots 70%. That's why. Brook Lopez came in when the limited time he played. James Harden, Steph Curry, Dirk Nowitzki, then limited players. Kevin Love, Mason Plumlee, Goran Dragic, Blake Griffin. I mean, if you just take the guys, there's a bunch of weird names in here because I haven't done a filter on it because I don't want to do a filter because the next thing I'm doing. But Durant, LeBron, Lopez, Harden, Curry, Nowitzki, Love, Plumlee, Dragic, Blake Griffin, Dwight Howard, J.J. Redick, Dwayne Wade. Wade was really much better than people realized. Hey, there's Carrick Felix. So let's take a look. That's the system. I showed that to you. It evaluates your ability to get a shot off and your ability to use your possession efficiently. It's kind of the two things. So let's take a look at Bledsoe last year. Fabulous offensive player as well. This is really the unknown talked about thing about Bledsoe. Dragic is a 31.9 Locke offensive rating last year, which is elite. The way the Locke offensive rating really works, the best I could tell you, is 10 is league average, 20 is a high-level starter, 30 is elite. Here's Bledsoe at 23.2. That's a big upswing. If you go to where he was a year ago, he was a 3.3. This was a huge jump from his time with the Clippers to his time with Phoenix last year. One of the things that I love to look at, the two most efficient ways to score are three-point attempts and free throw percentage of attempts, trips to the free throw line. So in the Clippers, he was a 10% of his shots were threes and 8% of his shots were possessions used were free throws. He turned it over 18% of the time. Last year, you go to Bledsoe, suddenly he's up to 17% of his shots were threes. 13% of his possessions were free throw attempts. That has to be as high a rate as there probably is as a point guard. Still turns the ball over at an alarming rate, but just terrific. In fact, let's take a second because now I'm curious, and this is what I do all day. Let's take a second and go to point guards, and let's do So these are the best point guards in the league, by the way, on the Locke offensive rating. Steph Curry, Goran Dragic, Patty Mills, Isaiah Thomas, Chris Paul, Eric Bledsoe. Pretty interesting, by the way, Patty Mills limited time. If you take the top 5, Phoenix now has 3 of the top 5 point guards in the NBA according to Locke offensive rating. There's Jimmer, by the way, Damian Lillard. So pretty incredible. They're going to run Dragic, Thomas, and Bledsoe, 3 of the top 5 point guards in the NBA. Not many guys over 20, right? I said over 20 is an elite level starter. There were only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys at that level last year. They've got 3 of them on their roster. That to me makes Phoenix interesting. I'll tell you in a second why I think they're in trouble. But to talk about Bledsoe for another moment, let's look at this, which I think is really where Bledsoe's brilliance is. These are the point guards that go to the line the most often, use the most possessions to go to the line. I don't know why Alec is in here as a point guard. He should not be. Well, because he started the year, probably there. Ramon Sessions, number 1. Ty Lawson, number 2. Boy, Denver's an interesting team. Alec is in here. It tells you how good he is. Devin Harris still going to the line at high. Chris Paul, Eric Bledsoe. That's big-time numbers. Goran Dragic right there. And just to the point which we talked about yesterday, just so that everyone understands what I was talking about yesterday with Trey. Here's guys who don't go to the free throw line. Out of the league, 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 out of the league. Kendall Marshall still in the league. Luke Ridnour's hanging on. Jose Calderon. Here's Jimmer, Mo Williams, and Trey Burke. So really on the 4.6% of Trey's possessions. Mo Williams very low as well. Eric Maynard out of the league right now. Most of these guys actually. Ronnie Price just got an invite, but very low. Drew Holiday, it's why I'd worry about him a little bit. Chauncey's just retired. Why Avery Bradley's overrated. Not great company there. You got to be able to get to the free throw line and that's where Bledsoe is so special. I kind of have a guess that many of you are looking at this right now and saying, well, if you're going to switch Alec Burks, and we were just talking about it, why don't you show us? So Alec Burks for shooting guard. Wait a sec. What do we? Oh, this is still sorting on Locke offensive rating. No, it shouldn't be. All right, here's free throw. Vanderblue, my favorite player. None of these guys are. Here's Harden, number 1. Sorry, I don't have any filters on. Harden goes to the free throw line, a stunning 17% of his possessions. Xavier Henry was 16. Jimmy Butler at 16%. DeMar DeRozan and Alec Burks. By the way, this one's worth looking at right here. Just since we weren't planning to go here today, but that's kind of what we do. This is what I think is really the exciting possibility of Alec Burks. This is why I have always loved Alec Burks. This is the DeMar DeRozan, Alec Burks combination. And you have to understand, back it up for a second, that DeMar DeRozan is using 24 possessions a game and Alec Burks is using 15. Okay. However, point per possession, 0.96 for DeRozan, 0.95 for Burks, because Alec turns it over a great deal more. So DeMar's a little better there. Both of them are a little bit above the league average. Point per field goal attempt, league average is 1.22. Alec is better than DeMar DeRozan. Point per scoring opportunity, which does not account for turnovers, Alec is better, 1.09. DeMar is actually below the league average at 1.06. This is scoring opportunities per 40 minutes. And the idea is how often, this is usage, really. And DeMar DeRozan's at 22, Alec's at 18. I think Alec will be at 22 this year. Alec will use possessions at this rate. Now, look how similar of players these are and how they use their possessions. Okay, DeRozan takes 4%, 64% of his possessions as a 2, Alec 60, and that is really just that Alec turns it over too much. Alec's got to get better at this. This is where DeRozan's better than he is. Percentage of trips to the free throw line. DeRozan 14.9, Alec 14.3. Both incredibly high, right? Only Butler, Henry, and Harden are better. So very, very high rate. Neither of them shoot the 3. Alec shoots it a little bit more than DeMar DeRozan at 12.5% of his possessions. DeRozan 11.3. Alec's got to get this number, this 12.5% of his shots being threes, in my opinion, has to get up to 18 19, 20%, because I'll show you, I'll do a search for you in a second. You'll see how low 12.5 is. And then, but he's got to find a way to keep this number at free throw percent. Harden only takes 41% of his possessions as a 2. It's an incredible number. Low number on that. This is not where I intended the show to go today, but we're now here, so we're going to hold on it. True shooting percentage. Alec is a little bit better. Effective field goal percentage. Alec's a little better. Cringe and grin. That's just the basic use of a possession. Alec's a little bit better. Larry H. Miller stat. DeMar DeRozan does more. And Locke offensive rating. Both these guys are above average. Not a great deal. Neither of these are elite level starters. I think that's really important to realize. Neither are elite level starters. But Alec Burks is at 13.7. DeMar DeRozan's at 11.3. So Alec, actually, in my mind, is a more efficient player than DeMar DeRozan. Now, can he maintain that if he goes to, ups his possessions, 4 possessions per 40 minutes? I don't know. That's where Gordon slipped last year, but I think he's going to do it. On the old school numbers, what you're seeing a little bit is that DeRozan shoots 30% from 3 and Alec shoots 35. That's why Alec, if he can shoot 35, can Alec shoot 35% from 3 while upping the amount of threes he takes? That's another huge question. But this is where Alec's year is so exciting on things. Here is the percentage of possessions used shooting a 3 of shooting guards. And I don't have, maybe now that I'm done with everything else, I wasn't planning to go, so let me throw a filter or 2 out here. Let's take guys that are playing at least 15 minutes a night. And let's take guys that have played at least 60 games. So now the Danny Green's at 50% of his shots are threes. Kyle Korver, 52. Terrence Ross is at 46. Ray Allen, 45. Tim Hardaway, Jr. These are your shooting guards. Now we walk it all the way down to find Alec. And Alec Burks, for a shooting guard in the NBA, takes the 4th fewest amount of his possessions as a 3. That's a real problem. That number can't stay there. DeMar DeRozan, this is why I'm not a DeMar DeRozan guy. I know he can score 20 a night, but he's using 23 possessions to do it. He's just an average offensive player because he doesn't shoot enough threes. He doesn't shoot them well. He uses his actual individual use of a possession of his is below the league average, DeMar DeRozan. But Evan Turner is a terrible shooter. The other angle on this, frankly, if you want to take the more negative side, is that, Evan Turner, this is where Alec is. Alec, as of right now, is either, and I'll do a longer post on this, Evan Turner, DeMar DeRozan, or Gerald Henderson. One of those is all right, but none of them are great, actually, because Alec's better than all of them because he shoots 35% from 3. He's got to up. These are the 4 fewest amount of 3 shooters in the league. Alec at least is going to the free throw line. Evan Turner's not going to the line and can't shoot. Gerald Henderson's not shooting threes and not going to the line enough. And that's why they're bouncing around. But this is the big one, Alec. It's got to get to 20% of his shots. I mean, look at this. There are only 1, 2, and that's 20%. Take that back. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 shooting guards. And I don't have a total number here. There's a ton, right? You can see this on the chart. 9 shooting guards in the NBA that, under the level we just talked about, that actually are taking less than 20% of their possessions as threes. And they are not great. Alonzo G, Antetokounmpo, but I think that'll change as he develops. Victor Oladipo, rookie. Austin Rivers, close to being out of league. Nick Kalathis, who's really a point guard. Alec Burks, Evan Turner, DeMar DeRozan, and Gerald Henderson. So Alec's got to get this number over 20%. 20% of his possessions have got to be threes, but he's got to now, can he maintain the 14%? Now here's the flip side. Let's go to positive. Let's play around for a second with Alec Burks. I don't know if this show is any good at all, but I hope it is, because this is just kind of what I do. So now if we say, oh, wait a sec, what did I just do? Clear that filter. I did the wrong thing. All right. Cancel. I still have a filter. Oh, let's clear it. All right. Now let's take for a second. What I'm saying is Alec Burks has got to get to a point where he is taking 20% of his shots or possessions, not shots, possessions. So his turnover issues here as threes. So let me just check one number here. Where's Harden's? Harden's at 16. What was that? What was Alec at for DeMar's at 14.9? So we'll call it over 20 and 15 is kind of my magic number. In fact, let's just clear everybody, and we'll just do this for everybody in the league. This is my magic number. This is part of the reason why I actually have great hopes on Gordon. So these are the players in the NBA who shoot over 20% of their possessions as threes and still go to the line 15% of their time. Kevin Durant, James Harden, Jimmy Butler. That's unique company. Kevin Durant, James Harden, really. But Jimmy Butler deserves some credit. Why? And he's not a great shooter, but he plays the game right. These other guys, I don't have my filters on anymore. It's a big ask on what I'm saying here on Alec Burks, and we'll play around with these numbers a little bit. More than 15 minutes tonight. I'll get rid now. So that's 20% of your possessions as threes, 15 at the free throw line. That's hard to do. So let's drop the filter on free throw line to 13% of your possessions. Now look who we have. Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kevin Love, Paul Pierce, Devin Harris, Jimmy Butler. Paul Pierce? This is the range you've got to be in. You've got to use 20% of your possessions as a three, and you've got to be around 13%. Let's go to 12. Go to line 12% of the time. Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kevin Love, Paul Pierce, Devin Harris, Goran Dragic, Jeremy Lin, Isaiah Thomas, Ryan Kelly, Jimmy Butler. It's pretty good company. But this is where Alec's got to be heading. That's a huge jump in three-point shots is what I'm talking about. You know, he's one of the lowest. Let's say he goes to 18. Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kevin Love, Goran Dragic, Paul Pierce, Chris Paul, Isaiah Thomas, Jeremy Lin, Ryan Kelly, Jimmy Butler, Devin Harris, and Antetokounmpo. This is also why Antetokounmpo is such an incredible prospect to people, because 14% of his possessions ended up on the shot go to the free throw. League average is 20% of your possessions are threes. If you're a shooting guard in the league, you got to be at league average. 9.6% of your possessions go to the free throw line. Being up at 12 and 13, you're an elite company. But this is the group that Alec Burks has to find a way to get into. All right, that was not my intention of the show, but it's 42 minutes long, so I got a bunch of questions here. I hope that was somewhat interesting. All right, I'm going to try to fly through some questions. Wow, we went long today. Do you think we currently have the players on the roster to effectively run Quin's system? Yeah, I think the guards are going to be terrific at it. I'm out of coffee. We definitely have to end the show. We definitely have the guards to run it. I think the question is going to be whether our bigs can pass. And Quin has said that he has been subtly pleased with that so far. So I think the bigs' ability to move the ball out of those elbows is probably more important. Can you give the link to the graph of the offensive RA in the defensive? Wow, Derek, look at you dropping the real adjusted plus minus or whatever the heck that is. Yeah, I could try to. I'll see if I can post it on my Google Plus page. From Damon Passy. Love your work, David. Will Dante Jones fight for a roster spot, or is he just filling training camp spot? How do you see the final roster filling out with recent additions of Murray, Felix, and Murphy? I don't think Kevin Murphy's got a great chance. I do think Dante Jones will fight for a roster spot. I think whether Carrick Felix looks like he can play or not is going to be a big part of that. Torrey Murray, I think, makes the roster spot. I'm not sure he makes, January 1 is going to be the next date on a lot of these guys. I think this is, but I wouldn't, I see the roster as Trey, Dante, Alec, Gordon, Rodney, those five. Ennis, Derek, Rudy, Trevor, Novak, Jeremy, because I love him. Those 6. Those are the 11 players I would worry about. I don't think there'll be anybody else coming out of camp that has impact on the rotation other than those 11. From Oren, amazing work, thank you. What's the most surprising thing to you in open gym games? How good Trevor Booker is. Unquestionably, the most surprising thing to me is how good Trevor Booker is. How do you think Hornacek will handle the rotation? What do you think about Isaiah Thomas playing for us? So you're thinking, can Thomas be an option if we decide to walk away from Burke? Oh, Thomas playing for us, you're a Jazz fan. Well, I mean, Thomas just signed a 4-year deal, so I don't, or 3-year deal, so I don't see that. And I'm not a big fan of 5'9" point guards. I'll tell you what, I am really concerned for Phoenix. I just think things change so much year in and year out. Well, I love the fact they have these 3 guards that are going to the rack and doing all these things I talked about. You got the Morris twins suddenly wanting to get paid. They were brilliant with Channing Frye on the floor last year. Their offense with Channing Frye on the floor was a 110.4. With him off the floor was only a 102.5. And they were actually, that's a huge difference. So that's 8 points per 100 possessions without Channing Frye. And now to lose him, I think, is huge. Plus, just the internal dynamics. I just think Jeff's got himself a really tough job this year. Clint Peterson, am I correct in thinking Snyder wants an early look in the offense, 7 seconds or less? Ask if there, then settle into the pick and roll. If that, yeah, I think that's the concept's right. Yeah, early attack at the 45, early pick and roll, get into flow, all very quickly. Excuse me. From Sky Goose, how has D-Boast looked in open gym? Have you noticed him at all? He has not jumped out, I would say. Hey, I'm not a talent evaluator, though. Let's be careful about some of these things. Out of curiosity, not meant in a negative way, are you an employee of the Utah Jazz or of the radio station whose payroll are you on? I'm a Jazz employee. Never hide it for 1 minute. I work for the Jazz. The radio station is owned by the Jazz, though, so it's a little mixed match. But my paycheck very clearly comes from the Utah Jazz. I wouldn't want it any other way. It's a fabulous organization to represent and work for. All right. I think that wraps us up today. Thank you. We just did 47 minutes on September 25th. You can follow me on Facebook at Locked On Sports or David Locke. Google Plus is David Locke. We have the Locked On Sports Google Plus community. I'm on Twitter at Locked On Sports. Thanks so much for all of that. Remember, the listener interaction line this year is 801-237-38. 801-237-38. Have a good day. Be safe.